preprocessor directives. The C preprocessor is not a part of the compiler, but is a separate step in the compilation process, right? In a C processor is just a text substitution tool, and it instructs the compiler to do recur preprocessing before the actual compilation, right? Then all the preprocessor commands begin with the hash symbol, right? All the preprocessor command begin with the hash symbol. It must be the first non-blank character, and for readability, then a processor directive should begin in the first column. Then the following section lists down all the important preprocessor directives. So the preprocessor directive begins with the hash symbol, and it do not end with a semicolon, and the preprocessor before compilation of the source code, right? So this is the working procedure of C programming preprocessors. C program, then it move on to the preprocessor directives, then compiler, then linker, and finally it will be executable code, right? There are 4 types of preprocessor directives supported by C language. They are: first one is file inclusion directive, second one is macro substitution directive, third one is conditional directive, and the fourth one is miscellaneous directive. Then the list of all possible directives belong to each of the above is listed in the following figure. Then the preprocessor directive that can be divided into file inclusion, macro substitution, conditional directive, and miscellaneous. In file inclusion directives only we can use the hash include. Then macro is also used hash define method. Then conditional directive we are using if, hash if, else if, hash else, end if define, if int define, and undefined function. In miscellaneous directive we are using a hash program, hash error, and hash line function. So these are the main important concept of preprocessor directives, right? Then the detail of above listed preprocessor directives are narrated in the following table. The following directives are hash include. The hash include is nothing but it can be used to the header file. Hash define is nothing but we are using the substitution macro, and if function is used to block of code depending upon the result of conditional expression. Then hash else is nothing but it is a complement of hash if. Elif function is used to do if is one statement, it is similar to if else ladder. And end if statement, it uses the flag the end of the conditional directives. Then undefined function, undefined preprocessor macro. Then hash if define, it return if constant is defined earlier using the hash define function. Then if n define, it return true if constant is not defined earlier using the hash define function. Then a hash program, it is issued special command to the compiler. Then hash error, print error message on the standard error function. Then file inclusion directives. In file inclusion directive we can use only hash include header file. So it is used to include header file inside the C program. Then it checks for header file in correct directory if path is not mentioned, right? To include user defined header file, double quote is used instead of using the triangular bracket. So normally we are using this method as a header file, hash include stdio.io.h, standard header file. Then hash include big.h, here it is the user defined header file, right? Then preprocessor replaces hash include stdio.h with the content of the stdio.h header file. Then hash include sample.h, it instructs the preprocessor to get the sample.h from the current directory and add the content of the sample.h file, right? Then macro substitution directive, we are using the hash defined function. It is the simple substitution macro. It substitutes all occurrences of the constant and replace them with an expression, right? There are the two types of macro supported by C. One is simple macro, another one is macro with argument. The first one is simple macro. The syntax of the simple macro is hash define identifier value. Here, hash define is nothing but it is a preprocessor directive used for text substitution. Identifier is nothing but it is used in program which will be replaced by value, right? Then value is nothing but if the value to be substituted for an identifier. So here the example, it is a constant value hash defined pi value, that is pi 3.14. Then hash defined null is 0. Here the example of the preprocessor directive, find the area of circle using the simple macro function. So here also we are using the header file hash include stdio.h. Then we can define the pi value pi 3.14. Then main function integer radius, the circle of area of circle, right? Int radius, float area, print enter the radius of the circle. Then scanf ampersand area. Then apply the formula of circle. Area is equal to pi into radius pi r square, right? So already we can assign the value of pi 3.14. Then we can give the value of radius is 10. Then 3.14 into 10 into 10. Then print the circle of area. The output is enter the radius of circle is 10. Then the calculated value is area of circle is 314.00, right? Then macro with argument, here we are using hash defined preprocessing directive can be used to write macro definitions with parameters, right? Whenever a macro identifier is encountered, the arguments are substituted by the actual argument from the C program, right? Here all the data type definition is not necessary for macro argument, and we can use any numeric value like integer, floating point values, etc. It can be used or we can pass as a macro argument, right? Then the argument of argument macro is not case sensitive, right? Here also using the same example, we can define the area of circle hash define area of R 3.14 into R into R, right? So the program calculating the area of circle using the macro with argument, right? With argument. So here using the header file, define the area and define the radius of the circle. Then integer radius, float a print enter the radius of circle. Then scanf radius. A is equal to area of radius. So here we can call the function is A is equal to area of radius. Then print of area of circle is equal to percentage of A. Then we can put the value of input, enter the radius of circle is 10. The output is 314.00, like that. The next one is predefined macros in C. So here the C programming define the number of macros used in the following table. Macro first one is null. The description is value of null pointers constant. The exit success, the value of exit function to return in case of successful completion of program. Then exit failure, value for the exit function to return in case of program termination due to failure. Then maximum value return in the particular random function. Then file contain the current file name as a string. Line is nothing but current line number as a integer constant. Date contain current date in month date of year wise format. Time the contains current time in hour, minute and second format. Here also the example to print the value of predefined macro. So here we are using header file stdio.h, hash include stlibrary.h. Then applying the main function. Inside of the main function we are using print null. Then print exit success, then exit failure and max. file, date and line. So we can apply all those macro predefined functions. Then the output is null means 0, exit success is also 0, exit failure is 1, rand max is equal to 32767, file name is bulletin macro.c, date August 16, we can put any one date, and total number of line in the particular program is 12. So these are the predefined macro. Then conditional directive. So conditional directive we are applying hash if, hash else and end if function. So the conditional directive permit to include a block of code based on the result of conditional expression. So this is the syntax. If expression we can write any one statement, else if expression write any statement, hash else we can write another one statement, end of the if statement. So here the expression represents a condition which produces a boolean value as a result. The conditional directive is similar to if-else condition, but it is executed before compilation. Conditional expression must be only a constant expression, right? Here also the example program to illustrate the conditional directive include a stdio.h hash define a of 10 integer main, if a greater than 5 printf x, else if a less than 5 printf 4, else printf 0, end if return. So if the output is x is equal to 10, right? So we can already assign the value is 10, right? So these are the same examples for a conditional preprocessor directive. The next one is miscellaneous directive. The program directive is used to access compiler specific preprocessor extensions. Each program directive has different implementation rule and use. There are many type of program directive and varies from one compiler to another compiler. If compiler does not recognize particular program, then it ignores the program statement without showing any error or warning message. So this is the concept of miscellaneous directives, right? For example, program sample integer main print program verification returns 0. So output is whatever we can give the input in printf function means it will give the return the output, that is program is verified. Since the hash program sample is unknown for the Turbo C compiler, so if it ignores sample directive without showing error or message, warning message, and execute the whole program, right? So the simplest statement is not present for the program hash program file directives. First one is program startup, program exit, program rn, program option, program inline, program argument used, program header files, program header stop, then program saver. So these are the sample program directives, directives supported by C. The last one is errors. So error is nothing but the error hash error directive causes the preprocessor to emit an error message. The error hash error directive is used to prevent compilation if a known condition that would cause the program not to function properly, right? The error hash function is used to prevent compilation if a known condition that would cause the program not to function properly, right? The syntax of hash error is hash error message. The example is if n define pi hash error include pi hash end if return 0, right? So here the compilation error will be occur, that is error directive is include pi as a error file. Then line function, it tells the compiler that next line of source code is at the line number which has been specified by constant in hash line directive. The syntax is hash line number of file name, where file name is optional. Here the example, the inline is 700, so print line number of line, we can print 3 line number, then return 0. So the first line number is 700. The next printf function is 701 and 702.